no good. Rebounded by Anthony. 2 seconds left. Anthony for the win. Got it! Rolls it! Cole Anthony gives the Magic a victory.
Close Up Magic.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Close Up Magic. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and as always, we got my man, Malik Grady. Sir, how you doing this evening?
Man, we're past media day, dude. The season is here. How did we get here so quickly? The vibes are, as always, immaculate. Immaculate.
Yes.
No, rewind that one. That didn't sound right.
Nice.
That sounds like what Stuff and Mrs. Stuff do behind closed doors, frankly. And that's not right. So anyway, go ahead.
Man, we have a great episode today. We have Jonathan Alecia, contributor to the Close Up Magic. He's covered Magic games. He's written articles for us. He's been on the podcast many a times. He went and represented us at Media Day for the Orlando Magic yesterday, and just had a great experience over there with it. Got to take in the new building, talk to some of the players, and just feel the vibe and the culture of this team and what's going on. And we had a really nice conversation with him. Just kind of like, I don't know. It was just a really good conversation. And I think listeners are going to take what we say and what we hear and be able to digest it a little bit differently than maybe what some of the other stuff you've been hearing so far, because we're kind of like taking in multiple days. I don't know, man. It's just, I think I'm just really hyped off of what we talked about. And I'm having a hard time explaining that into words for the listeners. But it's just a really good show. Before we get to the conversation, we're going to get into the housekeeping of this show. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. We really could use that. We have some numbers we're trying to get. I think we're just at 200 or just slightly over. Love to get us closer to 250 real soon. So just if you're watching, hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate that. If you're listening, go ahead and give us a review on your podcast platforms. That'd be really great as well. We got merchandise. I'm wearing it. You can see the Close Up Magic shirt. You can see the Close Up Magic hat. I know some of our other contributors have bought some, and it's on their way. It's nice. This shirt feels great. It breathes well. The hat feels real nice, good quality. And they're all really reasonably priced. So check the links in the show descriptions to go get yourself some merchandise. We are presented by 19 Media Group. They're the ones that helped us get merchandise. They help us just support us through all sorts of things on the back end, and we really love and appreciate them. As a matter of fact, Jonathan, our guest for tonight, he has a podcast that we're going to plug called Friends with Boredom, and it's really cool. It's him and his cousin. They talk about a variety of topics on life and current events and things like that. And they bring on a really good guest, and it's just a really good show. And one of the shows that I've been listening to for, 5-6 years since they've started it. And they're also on the 19 Media Network.
Mm-hmm. And he has an episode that's dropping on Thursday that he's really excited about. So looking forward to listening to that, seeing his particular way of commenting on things and the way how it kind of brings it around to different things and all. So looking forward to that. And going from there. So 19 Media is always doing great work. And this time specifically with our brother Jonathan, who's affiliated with the Close Up Magic as well. Friends with Boredom. Check it out.
Yes. All right. Without further ado, we're just going to get into this conversation. Enjoy the show. Thanks for listening. All right, everyone. Like I said in the intro, we got Jonathan Alecia with us, fresh from Magic Media Day, man. First off, Jonathan, thanks for joining us this evening. And also thanks for representing the Close Up Magic at Media Day yesterday. I got to ask one question. Just start this all off. Start off this conversation. It's kind of like a two-parter. One, when you walked into the new training facility, did it look and smell like championship material?
It smelled like 4 seed.
4 seed. I got you.
I got that. 4th seed's good. 4th seed's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Markel said it. Gary Harris was asked about it. So I'm rolling with that.
Yeah,
if they think it, I believe it, and that's what it smells like.
Well,
my question, of course, is wondering whether or not how tempted you are to send the players your highlight video just to give them an example of your bona fides.
Yeah. No, they know that
They know.
Weltman and Hammond know where to find me.
Okay, gotcha.
I've tagged them in that. They know where to find me.
Nice.
If they need someone to set, I mean, given my current physical condition, I don't even know if I can set a good screen. But give me a few weeks in training camp, I can set a good screen, an occasional behind the back pass. So, I don't remember seeing too many of those last season. I can provide that.
Yeah, it's about the playoffs anyway. We're not worried about the regular season.
Yeah, and honestly, they need a veteran guy. I'm 33 years old, so
thank you,
dude.
Go ahead, Steve. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I guess my follow up to that, to kind of just start getting right into the meat and potatoes of this conversation is
So Stephen, I do have a 6'5" wingspan.
Yeah, okay, so you're right, exactly. You're a solid dude. Was more or less about the you said 4th seed. You said you heard multiple people say that yesterday. My real question is, from what I was picking up off the interviews and off the recordings and whatnot, is that there's a lot of optimism from this team. A lot of players think this team can win some games. That feels like it's the direction from the front office, the direction of the coaching staff, just collectively from all the things you heard yesterday. Is that sort of what you were picking up too, that winning is the expectation for this team?
I don't know that it's winning per se, but I do think being competitive and fighting for wins. I don't think we'll see guys held out as long, you know what I mean, with ticky-tack injuries.
Okay.
I don't think we'll see Coach Mosley going 13 deep, in a regular season game. I think there'll be tighter rotations. And I think by and large, the guys sort of know this isn't a tank year. I think a lot of that can sort of be hinted at through discussions about leadership. Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr. talked about that quite a bit. They're still young, but they've been in the league for a while. They're not really looked at as young guys. And they've hinted how vital it is that they express leadership in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Markel Fultz talked about it a little bit too. And a lot of those guys now sounded more like veterans in a sense. I don't know how to really articulate it, but there was a level of maturity, even in Cole Anthony's responses, with him focusing on his body more and his diet, and doing things that sort of not necessarily only expand his game, but things that'll help the team, like him moving without the ball and things like that. I think, when you walk away and you listen to those guys, it does sound like, they're going to do everything they can to win games, but the East is competitive. It's hard to say, seriously, if they're going to be a 4 seed, if they're going to be a play-in team. I think the goal should be to compete for a play-in spot for sure. I think that's, without being said, I can see that being a goal of this front office.
Yeah, I really appreciated the kind of unified tone, and obviously they kept repeating next level, because obviously Coach Mosley had said that, but a lot of guys kind of translated that to themselves, saying, I need to pick it up for myself, where we need to be more accountable to each other. If someone steps up and does something, we need to say it. And even today, you saw a little bit of the media stuff. They said that during practice, when a group made a mistake that they should have already known, should have learned last year, that group was like, okay, all right, you're off. We're going to the side. You can talk it amongst yourselves. We're going to coach you. But the next group goes on, wasn't making a mistake, kind of having that a little bit less margin for error, saying, hey, we're not about just development. You develop on the sideline sometimes when you're messing up, because we already told you what to do. Get it right. And I like that feeling. Now, what does that mean in terms of wins and all? I don't know, but I like the vibes. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, I just want to jump in there, and I'm we hear about that today, but it's great that what we were told, earlier this summer with some interviews from Jamal Mosley, that having higher expectations, not needing to repeat and allow them to do the same things over and over again, like he would do last year to learn and grow. He laid his foundation last season. So allow with the same group coming back, he should be able to allow them to hold them to a higher standard of play in practice and on the court, and even in the locker room to an extent. So it's great to hear that it's already been implemented today in practice. Also that the players seem to understand it. When Jonathan and what we hear in the interviews over the last couple of days is leveling up, taking it to the next stage, like those types of quotes and sayings, like it sounds like Jamal Mosley's message has already been set and the players have already heard it, in my opinion, which is an excellent thing because it sounds like the players are all on the same team.
And they've acknowledged too, like the injuries last year were a big reason why they struggled a lot. Obviously, they're not going to straight out say like, and the mission was to tank, focus on our individual goals and sort of team goals were secondary. But they did talk about like health was a big reason why they tanked this year or they struggled last year. And a lot of these guys came back with a renewed focus on their health and their body. I mean, you saw Cole Anthony talk about diet.
Swole Anthony, that is.
Yeah, Swole Anthony. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, he's bigger. He looks big. Doesn't just look like 10 pounds of gain weight. That looks like 10 pounds of muscle. Like, no joke. Mo Bamba, upper body looks a little bit beefier. Wendell Carter Jr. looks a bit leaner. Paolo Banchero looks like an absolute tank. I'm sure his body's going to continue to improve as he gets older. Fultz looks more solid. He keeps putting in the work, and you just see like I can't speak to JI because he was so far away from where I was, and of course I left a bit early. But the focus on getting their bodies right to avoid the ticky-tack injuries, while also adding, like you said, phrases like leveling up. That just hints at like, this isn't a season where we're actively going to tank. Like, obviously that could change down the line if things just go off the rails. But I think this team not only is too talented, but too deep for them to really, really go off the rails. We've talked about this on Twitter in our little group chat, but I know you're not going to like this, Stephen, but we have 15 guys who can probably play minutes. That includes
14.
Bowl.
14 guys for sure.
I think it's 15.
Maybe.
Not that I think Bowl is like a... Okay, I'll give you that. Because Bowl is an unknown. We'll give him that a half. That's probably the nicest thing Stephen has ever said. That insinuates that Bowl is half of an NBA player, which is kind of messed up because he seemed to be like a nice guy. Honestly.
Sure, he's a great guy.
But he's just not an NBA player to you.
We can go down the Bowl rabbit hole another time. I think
he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Is back to your question, your thought about depth, right? And to me, it's true. I totally agree. Like we were referencing this in our group chat earlier. Is Markelle Fultz and Gary Harris might not be there to start game one at the guard spot. That's okay. We have Cole Anthony, we have Jalen Suggs, we have RJ Hampton, we have Caleb Houston, we have Terrence Ross. Like we got a lot of players that can fill in between the 1 and the 2 right there. And also, cool, we have Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero that can also run point. So I'm not like really worried if Jalen or Markelle Fultz and Gary Harris aren't there to start day one. And I'm just saying that
the same can be said for the front court too.
Yeah, totally. I was just wanting to confirm like examples of the depth that we have. It's crazy. Exactly. Why don't you go on about the front court?
Well, I was going to say, like, look at the last 2 seasons. We've had 4 or 5 guys out at a time. And obviously continuity is always going to be an issue when that happens, and you're going to struggle. But we also struggled because even with those 4 or 5 guys out, we were reliant on guys who were borderline NBA players or straight up G League players to get the job done. Guys who were maybe not even cut out for the G League. They were that desperate for bodies. Worst case scenario, if you have 4 or 5 guys out now, like Mo Wagner, for example, is probably the 11th man right now. And that's a guy who played pretty good minutes for 2 years now for us. That's a luxury to have. Same with RJ Hampton. Like, he's maybe the 10th man. And, you have 2, 3 guys out. All right, suddenly these are, instead of being your 10th and 11th guys, Hampton and Wagner are maybe your 8th and 9th guys, depending on who's out. That is a luxury to have. Not that they're world beaters, but they can give you minutes. They have NBA experience. And when your 15th guy is a guy like either Bowl or Kennedy, depending on how training camp plays out, like Bowl was a top high school prospect for a reason. Mm-hmm. Kennedy is an upper echelon G League player. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're pulling in
bums,
bottom feeders. Yeah. So, I hate to say that about guys who are elite athletes, regardless of whether they're in the NBA or not. But comparatively speaking, they were not up to par, and I think that's something we no longer have to worry about. Your boy Admiral is, granted, he's a bit older, but he's a G League player who has NBA experience, has played good minutes for a few years in the NBA now. And who's the guy that we just signed? Malik, the other two-way guy, the guard. I can't think of his name.
Kevon Harris.
He looks like a player.
Second Harris.
Yeah, he had great G League minutes last year. Did great in summer league this year. Now, Jonathan, I'm interested. Of the people that you saw that you're in contact with at Media Day, you mentioned Cole coming off with more leadership, Wendell. Which one of them, or maybe somebody else, which one of them kind of was the most showed the most leadership? Who do you think is going to be the leader of this team, just based on your kind of in-person thing? Will it be Cole? Will it be Wendell? Is it somebody else?
Could it be both?
I can see it being both. I think Cole is a leader in it's sort of in the Jamal Mosley mold. He's very encouraging. He's very outgoing. We see it all the time. He shows up for different teammates doing different things in the off season or in the summer or whatever they have going on. But Wendell Carter actually spoke to it, trying to understand different leadership styles, meaning some guys will respond better to harsher treatment. Some guys exactly, like that. That's not something I would expect. Granted, he's been in the league for 5 years. It's still not something I would expect a 23-year-old guy who's really just coming off their best season ever, and who's had sort of a checkered history with does he care enough? Does he have this? Does he have that? Is he able to improve upon the player he was? Because for a while he was kind of stagnant in Chicago. And so for him to have the season he had and then come into this offseason with the frame of mind is all right, I want to be a leader. And then to say what he said, honestly, I was not blown away, but I was so utterly impressed. That he has that mindset.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I had that same feeling when I spoke to Wendell last year in the game or two that I was able to go to. And I really think that signing that extension, it meant so much to him to be entrusted with that he wanted to be a leader. He wanted to step into that. He did speak to the team. And once again, just like we talked about Jamal Mosley saying, this is what I want to happen, this is the foundation, to see it following through in Media Day and the first day, it's just nice to see. I'm enjoying the process. Now, how does that process turn out? I don't know, but I like what I'm seeing in terms of what they're saying. And then you see, how it follows through. The next step, obviously, is how does it factor in on the court? Because you want those next steps and all, but at least nice to be on a nice path instead of being I don't know why they're doing this or saying that or anything like that. It's nice to feel like you're on a good path. You know what I'm saying, Stephen?
Well, yeah. I mean, I totally know what you're saying. And I think it just goes to show about the culture of the Magic that they have right now, because I don't think we need to pigeonhole who's the leader of this team. There can be multiple leaders of this team. There can be multiple different ways of being a leader on this team, right? Just think of your company culture. The president isn't the only person who runs the show at a job, right? There's different types of impact players and people there. And so, you had mentioned it. You had said Bamba had talked about leadership. Wendell Carter talked about leadership. Cole Anthony talked about leadership. Paolo Banchero talked about how Terrence Ross has been a leader to him and helping him transition, getting over to the Magic. I heard that on one of the interviews. And so it's just, I think it just goes to show like there's different types of leadership. There's different types of players on the team that can be supporting of one another. And I think it really just goes to show like, as long as it doesn't get to like a competitive level of like, yo, whose team is this? Right.
Gotcha.
Like as long as it doesn't get to
Infighting
that
maybe,
level, I think the more people we have trying to be, I'm going to just say stepping up their personal impact on the team outside of being on the court. Leveling up that way as a person over a player. Like I feel like it's just going to continue to set this team up for success and the culture that the front office and Jamal Mosley want to have here. Which is just awesome. It's awesome to have.
They have a level of investment in the team.
Yes.
They're
not just coasting by,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you think about our last last iteration of the Magic, we had Vucevic and Oladipo and Tobias Harris and a ton of talented young guys. Really, as a Magic fan, it was for all of us. We didn't go through too many rebuilds. Not to throw you under the bus, Malik, you're a little bit older than us, so you can probably speak to maybe some of the earlier years in the Magic history where they were sort of forming an identity. But I would say a vast majority of Magic fans became Magic fans in the mid-'90s when Shaq and Penny were on the rise. And so we never really had to experience a full rebuild. Even the post-T-Mac era, like, we went from T-Mac to Steve Francis and Dwight Howard, and then Dwight Howard, and Rashard Lewis and Hedo Turkoglu and Jameer Nelson. Like, so a lot of what we saw, it was new to us. We didn't know that like there were certain things we needed as a fan base that we needed from a collective group of young players on the Magic, like leadership and culture, like
veterans.
Those weren't, those aren't things that we were really familiar with. Really probably the first time in team history where we went full rebuild. And like seeing that versus seeing what's going on now, it sort of puts in perspective. I was like, all right, now I understand why maybe some of those guys didn't reach their full potential. Maybe, why the team as a whole didn't succeed, even though they had the talent on paper to be better than a 20-win team. They looked like on paper, in hindsight, that's a team that goes to the playoffs. And now we're sort of seeing with this group of young guys, there is an emphasis on culture, on chemistry, making sure guys are both taking care of their bodies, that developing winning habits, things like that. I feel like the last iteration of the team, none of that really came into play until Steve Clifford came on board, and by that point in time, a lot of our guys, their ceiling was significantly lower than what they could have been when they were drafted, maybe with the exception of Vucevic. So it really is a nice change that we're seeing from the team as a whole. And I think Jeff Weltman and John Hammond, even with the last iteration of the team, have shown how much continuity matters, which of course, Stephen, I don't know if you remember last year, 2 years ago, whenever it was, we had Adam Papagiorgio on. Him and I went on a rant about how teams like the Miami Heat build culture, and that's by like just keeping guys in
have
place,
a through line,
and just not giving up too early, and really working with these guys through the ups and downs of their career. You see it with Mo Bamba. We've seen it with Wendell Carter Jr. We've seen 2 years of it with Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz. And having a team stick with these guys through the ups and downs of their career builds character, it builds leadership, it builds camaraderie in the locker room, and it builds culture. And I think it is really exciting to see that that's actually happening here with the Magic right now.
Well, it's interesting. We just said something, Steve. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll let you pick up after that. It's fine.
Well, I was gonna say, you mentioned Terrence Ross. He's someone who really kind of caught my ear in the way he has been speaking and is speaking. You go back to, before the draft, or maybe around that time where he kind of said things that made us all think, all right, bags are packed, they're by the door. His lady has been told to look for houses wherever we're going. It's time for here is short. But then you started seeing the kind of tone change. You got quiet. He started speaking differently on Twitch. He actually spoke to it a little bit at Media Day, saying that, hey, when you get the number one pick, it kind of changes things. And then when that number one pick is Paolo Banchero, all right, let's roll. Especially somebody he knows and he thought was the best player out there. But to me, he's saying the right things as a leader. And I'm thinking back, I kind of want to point, I think Gary Harris is a big part of that. That Gary Harris, who was such a known leader at Denver, Terrence Ross mentioned Gary Harris like 3 or 4 times in just that 10-minute span, talking about, me and Gary says this, and we did this, and talking about how Gary and he have become storytellers. And that's what their role is as veterans, telling the young guys, saying, hey, when I came to the league, Kyle Lowry was telling me this, and this guy was telling me that, and there's things to look out for, things to do, and this is what works and stuff, and just kind of being that old beard and stuff. And it's just been really nice to see. And it's like, in your mind, you're like, we only have 2 veterans. But, there was a time when we all scoffed at the idea of Terrence Ross being a veteran mentor. Like, he was, I'm not saying he was a clown, but it was just a fly-by-night conspiracy theory guy. But in the course of this year and a half, he really is saying the right things. Again, what does it mean? We'll have to see how it plays out and all, but it's nice to see that change and all. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, I think I want to piggyback on that goes back to what we were talking about in regards to the team being more competitive. Terrence Ross is going into his 11th year, I believe. He's been around. He's been on good teams, bad teams, and mediocre teams. And he knows, and a lot of guys know, JJ Redick has talked about this in the past, you sort of know in the summer when you're working out with guys and you're seeing guys what the upcoming season could potentially look like. So for his tune to sort of change the way it has, where it's like, I don't really want to be traded. And Jeff Weltman sort of saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, Terrence has kind of walked back on his statements. Like, it tells me that Terrence has confidence that the team is going to be competitive. You know what competitive looks like. It's hard to say because the East is stacked. But
it's rough.
He's not an idiot. He's not an idiot. You know what I mean? You can't play in the league as long as he has and not have a general idea of what the team is capable of. And I think it's not something we've talked about maybe a little bit in the chat earlier, but he's not an idiot, and I doubt he would agree to, walk back his statements on wanting to be traded if he wasn't going to be a part of the rotation. And again, that sort of goes back to character and culture. Like, he's being rewarded, maybe not so much about what he does on the floor because he wasn't very good last year, but what he's meant to the organization over the last 5 years. He's been a fan favorite. He's helped. Like, we don't make the playoffs those 2 years without him. He was fantastic off the bench. He's
no complaining.
Yeah, and he was an important part of the culture then. And so I think like it all of that goes towards building culture. And that's what's these young guys are gonna see that. They're gonna see how well the Magic and the front office take care of them. Devin Kennedy talked about it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes to show just like where we're at as a team. We have our 2 experienced leaders, or someone who's growing into a different type of leadership, right? Terrence Ross didn't have to be a leader with the Raptor teams. He definitely didn't have to be a leader with the early Magic teams when he was here because there was already established culture, even if the culture wasn't great until, Clifford kind of turned some things around there. But there was it was Vooch and Evan and AG and DJ Augustine. They were like the types of leaders to this team. We can debate if AG was actually a leader or not, but so he was able to just kind of like just be the fun guy. Well, he can't be the fun guy now. He can be, but it's like maybe he didn't know maybe he needed a year to realize like, oh, this is where I kind of I have to grow now as a player in this way, right? Gary Harris kind of like fell into that leadership role a little bit more naturally. You know, we heard from the beginning, RJ Hampton constantly talking about his relationship with Gary Harris and the impact he had on him, you know, and Malik and I used to go back and forth a lot about veterans on this team. And those early years, I was so heavy, like, we need vets, we need vets, we need vets. This past summer, I was a little bit different with that tune. Like, would I have preferred to do something different with one of the roster spots? Yes. That didn't necessarily mean that something different was I wanted a vet, because we have guys going into their 5th year now with Fultz, Wendell Carter, and Bamba, all of them, and J.I. too, like guys that, like, they're not, I wouldn't call them vets. I would call them guys stepping into that veteran, like the early years of veteran play, right? You know, they've been in the league 5, 6 years now. Yeah. They haven't, they don't got some of them don't have the on-court playing experience to be veterans, but, you know, like, you don't just one day say, like, I'm a leader of this team, right? Like or I'm a veteran of this team. Like, some people, you need to grow into that and learn how to be a veteran. And process, I think it was important last year, even for, I don't know if they had that kind of relationship, but like Robin Lopez to show these younger guys what a leader is on a team. Gary Harris to show these younger but experienced guys that are, you know, going on to their 2nd contract, how to be a leader on a team. And so it's like, we're starting to, we have some, and we're starting to grow some, which is fucking awesome. I want to shift the subject.
To piggyback really quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Because we talk about Wendell Carter Jr. and Jonathan Isaac and Mo Bamba. They're all going into the 5th year, right? This is their 5th year, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah, they're all. I think Wendell and Bamba were in the same draft.
Yeah. They're going in their 5th. Fulton and Jay, I think, are going into their 6th.
Well, when the Magic acquired Terrence Ross, he was in his 5th year.
Yep.
So, like, none of us looked at Terrence Ross like he was a young guy when he got to us. He was an established player. Like, you're not thinking that he's a vet by any means, but he's 50, an established guy. Yeah. So, like, he did drop 50. So I think that, like, they are because they've been here so long, we sort of view them under a different lens, and they are relatively young given that they've been in the league for 5 years. But, you know, you put them on any other team, I'm sure other fan bases would view them more as an established player versus a young player at this point. So I think you hit the nail on the head, Stephen. Like, they are sort of, you know, coming into veteran status.
Yeah, now, to an extent, for sure. Sorry, I'm like, I want to shift the subject just a little bit, because I feel like this whole thing has been on leadership and culture, which is not a bad thing. It's great that we can actually have that conversation in such a positive light right now, when in years past it hasn't been always that. My question to you is a little bit fun. It's a little bit more like, you were there for a good amount of time, right? From the beginning, you had to leave a little bit early for personal stuff, and that's totally great, but you got to experience a lot of media day. What was the most shocking or surprising thing, experience, answer that you weren't expecting and came across?
Well, we talked about the Wendell Carter Jr. thing about leadership. So I was surprised about that. But really, more than anything, is just how big Paolo Banchero is.
Yeah.
Like, he's a kid. He's 19 years old. And he's built like a guy who's been in the NBA for 10 years already. It's alarming, actually. It's impressive. What
were some of the, when I'm sure a lot of the players and coaches and people like that got asked this question a lot, but like, what were some of the players' reactions and responses to when Paolo Banchero's name got brought up in questions?
Oh, they raved about him. They were raving about this guy. So overwhelmingly positive, I think. I think his teammates, Paolo's teammates, have high expectations for him. And I think Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr., part of why they've been talking about leadership is because they know they're going to be mentors to Paolo. And they seem, amped about being that for him. He seems to be well liked by his teammates already. We've talked about it. Terrence Ross and him go way back. Him and Fultz have a relationship
The
already. So,
Washington stuff go. Yeah.
exactly. So I do think that lends to some of the excitement because he'll probably be integrated easier than most any other rookie. But yeah, they just overwhelmingly positive. They're very impressed with him as a player. Very impressed with him physically. It's exciting. I think everyone sort of knows that he should be the front runner for Rookie of the Year. They didn't necessarily say it. Paolo said it. That's his goal this year.
That was cool.
Yeah. So expectations are pretty high on him right now.
Well, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't break into a little bit of the Pollyanna stuff. The Magic and their fans have been on a little bit of our usual roller coaster in terms of emotions when it comes to the injury front. Before training camp even began, we had the announcement of Markelle Fultz fracture in his toe, and then we were waiting to see what happened with Jonathan Isaac. It's been kind of funny, and then Gary Harris obviously having his they call it a meniscectomy of his knee. Everything seemed to be going well with that and everything like that. So obviously there's a whole sky is falling contingent within all of us. There's also that hope that we're finally going to be healthy again. But it's been interesting to see, in some ways, this expectations have been working in our favor, because when you had Markel's injury announced at the beginning, it was like, oh man, how long is it going to take? And even yesterday when J.I. spoke, actually when Boltman spoke, he was like, J.I., there's no timetable. And we were all like, oh, not again. What's going to happen? But when J.I. spoke, he was very confident. He was very, hey, I'm going to play this year. And now, again, he said these things before, but then even today, there was some footage of him practicing that kind of stuff. So I feel like, and even with Markelle talking about his broken toe, he was like, oh, just my toe. I can play right now, but they won't want to be careful. So I feel like the roller coaster is a little bit on the way up for all of these guys. We had the initial, oh my God, is it happening again? How bad can it be? We're cursed. Sisyphus bringing the rock up the hill yet again. Here we go. And then now it's like, okay, well, maybe things are the best, but Gary Harris and Markelle might be back for the beginning of training camp, and J.I. might be back sooner than later. So did y'all get that kind of roller coaster vibe as well? Like, where do you stand on it? Are you still down in the dumps? Are you kind of expecting hopeful, or are you just kind of, I don't know?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I'll start with Gary Harris because Kobe Price, who, by the way, literally just took the time to come up to me yesterday, introduce himself.
Shout out Kobe.
He's a good guy, dude.
Yeah, he was trying to. I thought I may have been in his way during one of the interviews, and I was like, I stopped recording to Kobe. Do you want to take my spot? This is your job. I'm just here as almost like a hobby. He's like, no, you're good. But yeah, as I was leaving, he walked over to me and he's like, hey, you're Jonathan. Yeah, it's nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for looking out. And just one very nice guy. It's cool that he did that. He took the time out when no one else was really mingling and whatnot. But two, he posted a video today of Gary Harris and the rest of the team shooting around. Harris looks fine. Obviously, how does he hold up in lateral movements and stuff like that? I wouldn't be surprised if he's ready day one of regular season. I think, Fultz, it's hard to say. He was walking around with a walking boot. I don't know if he had surgery. I doubt he's having surgery.
Yeah, they said no surgery for him, yeah.
Yeah, so again, if he's not ready day one, he'd probably be available shortly thereafter, especially if he said he can probably play on it now. They're probably just holding him out for preseason at this point, just to give him a little bit of time to get it right, and hopefully it doesn't get worse, because big toe injuries affect balance, and his game is predicated on his really elite balance.
Yeah, the herky jerky.
Yeah, exactly. Not overly concerned, because again, it goes back to what we said earlier. Like, we're a deep team.
Yeah,
we can survive a couple games without those guys. The J.I. thing is the thing that those two, the roller coasters go up. The J.I. thing, it just at best it stays neutral. I'm rapidly losing faith, if I had any left to begin with. Um, and it's hard to say like how much of that is just based in my bias of against what he says outside of basketball. But it just we've seen this before. We're Magic fans. We've seen it with Grant Hill. Every offseason it was the same thing. We were excited. This was the year he'd come back, and he didn't. We saw it with Penny Hardaway. Like, oh, I feel better than I ever have. And he didn't. He never did. We saw it a little bit with T-Mac post Magic career. A lot of us still followed his career. It's like, oh, he's coming back. This is the best he's ever felt, and it never happened. And a lot of that sentiment is being shared with JI. Like every year, we keep hearing it. Like, I'm going to play this year, and he doesn't, or he has it set back, or he plays a couple games, in the bubble, and then he's injured again. I'm at the point where it's hard to feel excited about the things that we see on the practice court and the things that we hear. A lot of us, and I know I'm not the only one, are just completely numb to his situation. Until we see him play, it's hard to feel any sort of way. Exactly. Yeah.
And I kind of fall into that. Like, it's just weird because it's like, he says he's ready to play today. Front office says he's still ramping up. Right. And so it's just like, it's been the same case. And one of my biggest gripes with this front office is their communication just sucks. And we don't get the same message on a consistent basis about, from what a player will say into what, or particularly with this case with Jonathan Isaac, what Jonathan Isaac will say to what, the front office says. And it's frustrating. So I'm optimistic he'll play this season. His tone saying like, I'm ready to play today is a lot different than him saying like, oh, I should be good to go around Christmas time. Like, to me, that's very different from what we heard him say last year versus this season. And
also to see him in video the very next day, banging with guys, going to the basket, dunking, that kind of stuff. The one thing is, it's like we didn't see him at all. Like, we saw it, what I'm saying?
And his social media accounts are starting to get a little bit more, basketball oriented. He posted some stuff, him dunking a few weeks ago. He's and not that I really care about what someone's posting on social media as far as if they're ready to play basketball or not, but I just think his mindset is like a little bit more like, I'm ready to go. Let's get it. Like, but who knows?
I don't doubt that he's going to play.
Healthy. So
that's the thing. Yeah, it sort of goes back to what I said. Like, we saw it with Penny Hardaway, we saw it with Grant Hill. Even that, do you guys are sort of off subject, but do you remember that year Grant Hill was finally healthy with us? I believe it's 2006, and he made the All-Star team.
So.
I was 16 or 17, and I remember the entire season, no matter how well he played, I was like, this isn't going to last. He's going to get injured.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He didn't get injured. And then he left. He stayed healthy, and then he left.
I know you got to wrap things up, Jonathan. I want to be conscious of your time. So I guess the way I want to wrap up this conversation that we're having is after media day, right? And from some of the news that we've trickled out, like, the content, I'll say, that's trickled out after today's practice. Has your thoughts about the team changed since a week ago? And if so, what's that change?
Maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic, but I don't know if that's just because I'm hungry for basketball. But I've been saying for a while now that I'm just generally excited for this season to start. I've been feeling optimistic, which you two can attest to. I don't often feel optimistic around this team.
It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, for the last couple of weeks, I've felt a sense of optimism.
It's a good feeling.
I don't know where it's come from, truthfully.
It feels like us talking when we first met, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, and we actually had no reason to really be optimistic then, but I was. But yeah, no, I think it's if nothing else, just being there in person and seeing the guys and the camaraderie and listening to them talk about the upcoming season. If it didn't change my expectations for the team, it definitely just sort of added a little bit of excitement to see how it all plays out. And I don't think I'm going to be too upset if we don't, make the play-in or anything. My expectation hasn't changed in that regard. I still expect them to win somewhere between like 30 to 35 games. And that's enough to keep me happy as long as the guys are competing, and that we see improvements. What about you guys? Has anything changed how you felt?
Malik, I'll let you take it.
It's interesting you asked that, because in some ways I'm more excited about the team and the direction of the franchise overall, but I've come down a little bit from basically for like 18 months. I've been saying this year, I expect the team to be in range to play in all year, and that the expectation was what's going to happen. I listened to a little bit of Nate Duncan and Danny LaRue's podcast. They were kind of doing their over-unders for the East and for the West. And they really get in the weeds and into certain things and all, but they're really focused on kind of offensive efficiency and what players you have are the best offensive players for how good you're going to do in a given year. And I was thinking that I love the direction that Paolo Banchero is going. I love the direction that Franz Wagner is going. I even am excited about Cole Anthony as maybe that third offensive guy, but I don't think that any of those three are going to be anywhere near elite offensive players. I think that those futures are going to be in the future. Like they're actually great years offensively are going to be in the future. Now maybe they skip the line and suddenly Franz Wagner is what you expect in year 3 or 4. Immediately that could happen. But for a rookie like Paolo to suddenly just be that kind of offensive engine is unlikely. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I'm any lower on him. I mean, rookies shouldn't come in the league and just, oh my God, he's just doing Carmelo things like he did as a rookie, for example. So it's like I'm more excited about the direction, but with the way the East is going, even with Boston maybe taking a hit, that kind of thing, I think they might be on the fringe of the plan. I'll still be excited. And then down the stretch, do they kind of make a futile run towards the plan? Do they fall back and get a better draft pick? I'll be cool with either and stuff. So it's just interesting. I'm a little down on the overall what the record looks like necessarily, but I'm more excited about where things are going. I mean, seeing Cole at 195 and changing his diet, getting a personal chef, talking about all the things he's going to do with the team and being ready to step forward. Jalen Suggs assessing what he thinks was the issue last year with his shot, like having consistency and knowing what needs to be done. I'm excited. I think those guys are going to be actually good. Chuma Kiki in the best shape of his life, shot looking good today. I think all three of those guys, Jalen, Cole, and Akiki, are just going to be flat out good players this year, which to me is transformative for the franchise. Because Paulo and Franz, I know they're going to be great, but if those three guys in particular, Jalen, Cole, and Akiki, are just good freaking players, the future is really bright. So I kind of mix things, but I'm excited. So what about you, Stephen?
I'll close this out and we'll end the podcast on this. I'm feeling really good about the energy and the team chemistry this year. I think I had a feeling it was going to be good, but after the last couple of days, I feel like it's going to be one of the best in the league. And I don't think this team is going to have an issue staying motivated on when they hit their first 3-4 game losing streak. I don't think the culture of this team is going to allow them to let that really mess with their heads, because I think just everyone's ready to level up, as Coach Mosley would say. As far as my expectations for the team, they kind of have stayed the same. I think they're around that 28 to 32 win team. And that's not because I don't trust this team. The East is really, really good this year. A lot of NBA teams that were unhealthy last year are healthy this year going into the season. And, it's just, my pessimism about them not like hitting like 35 wins is simply just because there's a lot of really, really good basketball teams out in this league that made smart moves to make their rosters gel better or level up in their own way. So that's kind of why, but I do expect the team to be more competitive. I do expect them to get wins that were not expected. I also expect Paolo to look like a rookie, much like Cade had rookie ups and downs. Like, it's pretty rare to have an Evan Mobley who makes the kind of impact he had from day one. Not saying it's not possible, but I mean, if anyone can have that kind of impact, maybe it is Paolo, but I don't think they're going to hand him the offensive keys right away. But I do think they're going to give him a lot of attention with the ball. And they should let him sink or swim a little bit his rookie year too. There's a lot of hands to feed, a lot of mouths to feed on this basketball team with guys who want the ball and need the ball. So that'll be interesting to see play out. But overall, I'm just looking forward to seeing how it all works. And it's going to be really fun and exciting and seeing, like you said, Chuma and RJ Hampton and even, Mo Wagner, if he gets playing time. And yeah, Bull. Like, I'm excited to see what these guys have.
Bamba.
And Bamba. Yeah. I've been talking the Bamba train all day. I'm going to not go down that route because it'll be another hour-long podcast. And we've already been talking longer than we said we would with Jonathan.
Well, we also, if things get tough with our Orlando Magic, maybe we just change our site to the Lakeland Magic because they seem like they're building a nice little team there. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we see either Devin Kennedy back up in Lakeland or Bol getting some minutes there.
Sure.
I just think the whole organization right now
team this year than last year. Last year, I thought their roster was trash. No one wants to talk about that, but it was sick. It was gross. They had, anyway, yeah.
I think there's just a lot to look forward to. It's like in baseball, like if you got a good minor league team and you got a promising, major league team, it's hard to really get too down on yourself. So I think we're doing, as an organization, literally all the right. I can't believe I just said that. All the right things. Stephen, have you ever thought this team was doing the whole organization all the right things?
I don't think they're doing all the right things, but I think they're doing a lot of right things. There's still some stuff I have some doubts and annoyances about.
There are things I'll keep to Twitter. I'm not going to ruin your podcast with my rants about certain players and certain things going on. But
we're at a good time to wrap it up. We've been talking here for almost an hour now. I think a great way to wrap this up is to just say, like, we're excited about the team. The Magic's excited about the team. The other fans and people in the community of Orlando and around the world are excited about this team, and we're starting to get talked about a little bit more on national coverage, which isn't indicative of I don't really take what they say for anything, but the fact that there is mention just lets you know that people are starting to be aware, which is cool. I don't care if they get the stats wrong or don't understand lineups or the impact of a player. Like, I don't care. That doesn't matter. I don't care if they watch our team, but the fact that they're talking about it is cool. It's like, there's no bad publicity in this world. And so it's great when you hear people talking about it. So with all that being said, Jonathan, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for representing the Close-Up Magic at Media Day and interacting and asking questions there. Malik, as always, it's a pleasure to have you, be my right-hand man. And I can't wait to really get into this season as the season continues to ramp up over the next couple of weeks.
Next Monday, first preseason game. Yeah.
We got some good guests coming up to start this season. Firing it right off tonight with Jonathan Alecia. So, thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Check out some merch. Get it ready for the season if you'd like. And let's go Magic. Peace.